morning, distinguished guests, esteemed professors, lecturers, students, and all participants joining us today. We warmly welcome you to today's International Academic Seminar, Geoeconomics and Geopolitics of Rare Metals, Lessons from the Dark Side of Clean Technology. This seminar is co-organized by the Faculty of International Relations, University of Social Sciences and Humanities, Vietnam National University, Ho Chi Minh City, in collaboration with Omega Plus Book, John Stock Company. Abbreviated as Omega Plus Book, the company was officially established in September 2016. It's nearly 9 years of development. Omega Plus Book has affirmed its position as an honorable publishing brand in Vietnam, particularly known as it focused on foundational knowledge books, especially in the field of social sciences. This event is held as part of our effort to promote academic exchange and global dialogue on pressing international issues, particularly in the context of technological transformation and environmental sustainability. First, allow me to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Guillaume Pitron. He is a French journalist, documentary filmmaker, and author specializing in the geopolitics of raw materials and clean energy. He has reported from over 40 countries for renowned media such as Le Monde Diplomatique and National Geographic. Mr. Pitron is the author of the book The Rare Metal War, The Dark Side of Clean Energy and Digital Technologies, which has been translated into 13 languages and adapted into documentaries and graphic novels. He is also a frequent speaker at international conferences, including TEDx and COP events, and holds a Master of International Law from Georgetown University. From the Omega Plus Book Company, it is an honor for us to welcome Mr. Guillaume, Chairman of the Board of Directors, Omega Plus Book, John Stock Company. We also warmly welcome our lecturers of the Faculty of International Relations, USSH, VNU Ho Chi Minh. Mr. Zhu Yuanmeng, Head of Department of English Languages and Diplomatic Skills, Faculty of International Relations. Dr. Trần Nguyên Khang, lecturers. Dr. Hoàng Cẩm Thanh, lecturers. Mrs. Trần Cẩm Thu, lecturers. Mrs. Lê Ngọc Khánh Ngân, lecturers. Mrs. Kiều Diệp Phương Quỳnh, lecturers. Mrs. Nguyễn Trần Anh Thư, lecturers. And we are also very honored to welcome our distinguished guests joining us today. Dr. Nguyễn Nữ Nguyệt Anh, Dean of the Faculty of Sociology, USSH. Ms. Trần Thị Tường Vi, Lecturer of Faculty of Business Administration, Nguyễn Tất Thành University. We also like to warmly welcome all graduate students, undergraduates, and participants present here today. Let's give ourselves a big round of applause. And now, it is our great honor to invite Mr. Guillaume, Chairman of the Board of Directors of Omega Plus Book, to share a few words with us. Thank you.
Professor and student, it's an honor for me to speak here today on the behalf of the Plus of the event, the seminar and talks about the very hot topic, rare metal, and the book of the Mr. Guillaume Pitron. Yeah. We also extend to the warmest thanks to faculty of the International Relations, University of Social Science and Humanity for the today. It's not our first time working with your faculty. Over the year, Omega Plus have many events in the university in Saigon and also many places. And we do hope that work with you for the more event for the collaboration in the future. So because today, so we know that you have more than 20 years history. So I think that best wish for the Mr. Men and your professor and the student when they have many for success in the future. And today the topic is very hot. You know, I'm very happy to meet Mr. Pitron, the author, also very special occasion to visit Ho Chi Minh and join us today. Thanks, Pitron. And because you know that the brand major war is it is geopolitical struggle that shaping the strategic alliance, trade agreement, and national policy, and it's also been more dispute because we've seen the United States with a major agreement with the Ukraine for the joint development of the rare earth resource. And I know that China as well as Vietnam also the nation have a quite good resource for the rare So is it not just the technological or environment issue, it also story the global power, the competition and survival. And it's the direct concern with the country, the Vietnam, and I think the Vietnam also is geopolitics, very hot, and next to the China as well is very hot is the trade war between the China and the US. So the rare metal also keeps the very big issue for the Vietnam. So we also very happy to publish the rare metal war is a moment, is the right time, and we hope that the book will bring for us many good information and good the advice and knowledge that the rare metal is very new, very hot for us. I also think that the book will bring not only for this seminar, also bring the more insight for the Vietnam policy maker and as well as reader in all the country. Thank you very much. We do hope that have the seminar successful and thanks again to the author, the teacher. We do hope that work with you is the future for many the event seminar in Ho Chi Minh as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyễn Cảnh Bình. On behalf of the Omega Plus book, Mr. Cảnh Bình has a small gift for the Faculty of International Relations. We would now like to invite Mr. Trương Doãn Mẫn, representing the faculty, to come forward and receive the gift. Thank you.
Như đã nói thì chúng tôi có một số món quà sách vở cũng như là của tác giả tặng cho các giáo viên, giảng viên cũng như là các em sinh viên. Như tôi vừa nói nãy thì tôi hy vọng là rất là tin rằng là sách rất là hữu ích cho các bạn. Chúng ta đang sống trong một giai đoạn mà khi nó rất hiếm, tranh hiếm rất là quan trọng như thế này. Xin cảm ơn.
Thank you. And now I would like to invite Mr. Trương Doãn Mẫn to stay on the stage and representing the Faculty of International Relations to share a few words with us. Thank you.
Well, before we start your section, I'd like to represent the Faculty of International Relations. Thanks again for your meeting today, and also thank you everybody here, including students and lecturers, colleagues, for your time and effort to come here this morning. And I hope that we're going to have the very fruitful and meaningful seminar with great insights from each one. Thanks again.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Trương Doãn Mẫn, for your sharing. And now we would now like to present a special gift to our distinguished speaker. May I kindly invite Mr. Pitron to come forward to receive our gift, and Mr. Trung will represent the faculty and present the gift to our speaker. Thank you very much. Once again, we extend our heartfelt thanks to Mr. Pitron for being with us today. And now, without further ado, please join me in warmly welcoming our keynote speaker today, Mr. Pitron, to deliver his speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I stay there or maybe be in the middle? I think I will be more comfortable in the middle. I really thank you for your warm welcome. I'm going to talk to you about a book which I wrote. It took me 6 years to write that book, and it was originally published in France in 2018, so 7 years ago. It's been revised with the latest updates in 2023, so you have the version with the latest updates. But that book, I was absolutely certain at the time, so I was writing it back in 2015, 16, 17, so it was 10 years ago, that the subject of critical rare strategic metals will become absolutely key. That will become a very hot topic in the future. So I came to see many editors in France, and I had many refusals. They didn't want to publish me because they said it's too difficult, too far away, too technical, we don't care about this. I said, no, I really have to try. And I found one editor in Paris, my editor. He said, okay, let's try. So I wrote my book. It took me 2 years to write my book, in addition to all the investigations which took me all around the world. And when the book was about to be published, I had no expectations, right? I was, okay, this is a book on the geopolitics of rare metals. No one will care about that. I mean, the book will be sold at 100 copies, you know. My mother will buy half of them to, you know, give that to your friends. I'm going to have 2 media talking about it, and everyone will forget about it, and that's it. And actually, when the book was published, it went crazy. People were very shocked by the book at the time, because I was talking about the dark side of green technologies, and I was saying, I will explain to you, green is not really green, and you know, that's more tricky than what you think. Let's get it right. We need to do the energy transition, there is no doubt about that. But we need to take into consideration a lot of side effects. And I was talking about this dark side for the first time in my country. So people were very excited, but very annoyed by the provocative side. And so my life changed, completely changed. From one day to another, the book got sold in France like 100,000 copies. So that was published everywhere, and if I had known that I would arrive here in Saigon and speak to you, I would not have believed it. So I feel very honored and very privileged to be here in Vietnam to speak about that fascinating subject. So let's get into the subject. How long do I have? Like 45 minutes? An hour? From now? Until 5 minus 10? Okay. I'm sorry? 15. 9:50. Okay. For so many years, I traveled around the world. I've been to China, I've been to Malaysia, Japan, the United States, South Africa, France, UK, and I had this question in mind: what will be the replacement for oil? And this is a very important question because, as you know, we are living an energy transition. And the energy transition, and I have in mind the COP21 Paris Agreement in 2015, which was a big event for us in France and I think in the world, because 195 countries signed the Paris Agreement saying we're going to accelerate the energy transition and we're going to try to limit the CO2 emissions in such a way that the global warming will be limited to 1.5 degrees by the end of this century. And this energy transition is basically the acceleration of green technologies. So this is wind power, solar power. This is electric cables to transport the green electricity all around countries, continents, in order to be stored in batteries. Either it's fixed batteries or mobile batteries, and all this will be, among other things, used for electric vehicles, like electric cars. All this allows to keep growing, have a better growth, but at the same time having less CO2 emissions. So the green transition is about really, using these new technologies and not using coal and not using oil and not using gas anymore. The thing is, the people don't exactly know that, when you look at a wind turbine, it's metals. You just watch it and you say, okay, it's a big thing and it's obviously made of metals. And when you look at a solar panel, it's made of metals. And when you look at an electric car and the battery for the electric car, and all the electricity wires transporting the electricity, all this is metals. What kind of metals are we talking about? We're talking about base and abundant metals. The most important metal for energy transition is copper. Copper is amazingly important. Why? Because copper helps transporting electricity. The best metal for transporting electricity is silver, but it's very expensive and there is not that much silver. So if you want to find a replacement, you find copper, and all the electricity wires are made of either aluminium or copper. And an electric car is made of copper. 4 times more copper in an electric car than in a normal oil car. And if you want to plug an offshore wind turbine to the electricity grid, you need copper cables in order to transport the electricity. We are going to consume, in the next 30 years, I'm talking about humankind, the world, is going to consume in the next 30 years more copper than all the copper that has been consumed by the humankind for the last 70,000 years. You got me. In the next 30 years, we're going to consume more copper than all the copper since the beginning of humankind. And 40%, 25 to 40% of that copper will be specifically used for the energy transition. Now there are also other metals which are very important for the energy transition. For example, let's talk about rare earths. There are rare earths in Vietnam, I'll talk about that. But rare earths are necessary. It's a family of metals, like 15 metal, 15, which is divided into lots of metals: neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, lutetium, all these kind of metals, which you find in every technology. You need rare earths for lots of wind turbines. You need rare earths for the motors of electric cars. The motor of an electric car needs rare earths. You have rare earths in your pocket all the time, because when you have a phone, a smartphone, when the phone vibrates, the vibrating mode is made possible by a magnet, and this magnet is made of rare earths. So because you're very kind with me, and because you have put your mobile phone on vibrating mode to listen to me until 9:50, basically the vibrating mode is made possible by rare earths. 1/10 of a gram of rare earths, but still you need rare earths. So basically this is very important. But you find also lots of other metals which are necessary. Lithium, graphite, cobalt are necessary for batteries. You will also find aluminium as a replacement for, I mentioned it, copper for electric wires. You will find bauxite, which is very also necessary for electric cars. You will find lots of small, tiny specialty metals: indium, gallium, germanium, dozens of such metals, which you find in green technologies. Now the question is, where are we going to get these resources? What will be the environmental costs for extracting and refining these resources so that it ends up in our green technologies? Will there be countries which will be holding the business of such resources the same way as Saudi Arabia has mastered the business of oil during the 20th century? Will we tomorrow invade a country, Greenland, to secure the access to such critical strategic resources which we need for the energy transition. So let's look at the energy transition not just by watching a beautiful advertisement for an electric car. We all know how such advertisements are. Beautiful, buy an electric car and you will save the planet. But it's not that easy. So let's look at the energy transition through the bias of such metals. And if we look at it in this bias, we have a different viewpoint. And I would like to repeat myself. Let's make it clear. We need to do the energy transition. There is no doubt about that. I can't wait for the day where we will get rid of oil, gas and coal. But we have to be conscious that we are creating new issues, which I would like to talk to you about. And I'll talk about Ukraine, Greenland, I'll talk about Vietnam, I'll talk about geopolitics, I'll talk about China. I will also talk about many things during these 45 minutes, like 40 minutes, to explain you more about all these fascinating challenges around these metals for the energy transition. Basically, we need to understand that everything that is green and everything that is clean, responsible, zero emission, stems from a scar in the ground. That is called a mine. You need to extract metals from the mine in order to make the technologies possible. And in Vietnam, there is a mining environment, a mining space, which is somehow developed. In my country, in France, there is no mining. So we, in France, and in most Western countries, we don't know much about the mining because we have no mine. But if you go to the mines where these resources are extracted, you see that there is an impact. If you go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, this country produces cobalt for the rest of the planet. Well, I've never been there, but when you read the news, you understand that somehow the mine is responsible and somehow the mine is not responsible. When you go to South Africa, where platinum is extracted, I've been there, you see the impact. When you go to China, where rare earths are extracted in graphite, I've been there, you see the impact. When you go to Indonesia, where I've been, where tin is extracted, there is an impact. There is the impact of extraction, and there is the impact of refining. Because first you have to extract, so you have to make a scar in the ground, open pit scar for most of the mines. But then you have the rock, you need to refine the rock, right? So you have like one big piece of rock, and then you need to extract a small amount of metal out of the rock. Okay, very good. How do you do that? Well, you need a refining plant, you need chemicals in order to separate the rock from the ore, and to come up with 100% pure metal, and you need a lot of water. And in some countries in the world where I have been, the water is being filled in the refining process with heavy metals from the refining process and with chemicals. And if this water is not treated, if there is no treatment plant, the water goes directly into the nature and it causes lots of environmental damages, lots of health damages for local populations. It causes social concerns, social tensions, political tensions. And in many countries where I have visited the mines myself, I can tell you that the mine always comes at a cost. It always comes with a specific cost. And this cost is mostly today supported, bared by global south countries, non-Western countries. So we're talking about China, we're talking about Indonesia, we're talking about Bolivia, Chile. So China is for many metals, rare earths, graphite, gallium, germanium, tungsten, antimony. In Indonesia, you find lots of nickel. Indonesia is the world's biggest nickel producer, but also tin. Bolivia and Chile, it's about copper and lithium. When we go to DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, it's cobalt and copper. And I could multiply the examples of impacts on the earth for that. The thing is, we don't really know that. We, in the West, we are not really aware that, you know, a green car is not exactly green, and that a solar panel is not exactly clean. We don't know it because we don't have the minds. And we don't know it because, I'm talking from my Western perspective, we used to have mines in the 20th century in my country. France was a world leader for many metals. We produced tungsten, antimony, gold. We could produce rare earths in my country, but it was dirty. So we closed all the mines. We closed in the 1980s all the refineries. We had a rare earth refinery on the Atlantic coast of France. We used to refine 50% of the world rare earths. That was a huge industry, very important. We mostly closed the activities, not all of them, but a lot of them, because it was too dirty. And because the people in France didn't want to have the dirt, right? So we basically turned to other countries, which were at the time in a developing situation, and which wanted to catch up their delay, their economic delay to the West. So we didn't want the dirt, but other countries wanted to have global growth, economic growth, and they were ready to open their minds to catch up their economic delay. And that was a wonderful trade-off. That was a happy globalization. We in the West, we just said, okay, we just close everything, but we know that we're going to have the metals, because you guys in Indonesia, in China, in Bolivia, in DRC, in Kazakhstan, in Chile, will open the mines and you will produce the metals for us. But for that reason, the extraction, the refining, and the pollution have been relocated far away from the consumer, far away from the Western countries. So how can you know that when you use green technology, if you are clean, someone has to be dirty for you? You get it? You can't be 100% clean. That doesn't exist. Economists have a word about that. They say there is no free lunch. So if the lunch is free, there is a problem. Someone will have to pay for the lunch, right? So the restaurant won't let you go. Someone will have to pay for the note. So who is paying for the note of the lunch of the green technology? Someone has to pay for it. And usually it is someone who is not very well paid, with a lot of social, environmental, health impacts at the other end of the world, in a developing country, far away from my beautiful Paris with zero emission cars. The world got divided, let me say it this way, between those who are dirty and those who pretend to be clean. And in my country and in the West, we have pretended for many years to be clean. Okay, we're clean, but someone has to pay for that at the other end of the world. We relocated the pollution. We let other people bear the cost of the pollution, and I turned a blind eye to it, and I just didn't want to watch it. That is the reason why, when the Paris Agreement was signed, saying, okay, we're going to accelerate the energy transition, we're going to do into that wonderful green world. Everyone, I remember, was kissing each other, taking each other's arms. Yes, we've done it, wonderful. Okay, I read the 29-page Paris Agreements. Nowhere in these 29-page Paris Agreements are the words mining, refining, rare earths, minerals, resource extraction. Nowhere. So people have seen the goal, but they haven't seen the means to achieve that goal. Right? You want to eat some good bread, but where are we going to get the flour? That's the first question. If you don't have the materials, you just don't do anything. So basically, we turn the things upside down in such a way that we forgot that first there were to be materials somewhere. And we turn the blind eye to the real environmental conditions for that. And we have, for many years, believed that there would be no environmental costs because we don't see them. We were just not witnessing them, and someone was paying for that price somewhere else in the world. And there was happy globalization. Everyone was happy. Developing countries were getting richer with mining, even if that was coming with a huge environmental cost. And we in the West were happy because we were buying the clean metals, putting them in our clean technologies and saying, oh, we're green. Everything is fine. But that was too easy, and this balance of powers changed 25 years ago, at the beginning of the year 2000s. At this time of world history, China was producing so many metals, a lot, and is still today producing a lot of these resources. China is a world leader for the production and extraction of all these resources. Either China extracts it, or China buys the resources from other countries and refines the resources on its territory. So let me give you an example. China extracts rare earths and refines rare earths from on their territory. But China also gets the rare earths from northern Burma, northern Myanmar, and brings the rare earths to China for refining. China gets lithium from Australia. Australia is the first lithium producer in the world, but Australia doesn't refine. So they sell their ore to China so that the ore will be refined in China. So basically, in any way, in whichever way you would like to get the metals, at some point you have to knock at the door of Beijing for asking for the metals. Okay? And China, in a very clever way, very clever, at the beginning of the 20th century, 21st century, started to lower its commercialization, exports of these resources. And the French and the Americans were just like, but what's going on? What are you doing with the tap? You're like Saudi Arabia, right? You're turning off the tap of oil. It's not oil, it's rare metals. And you don't want to sell us these resources anymore, or you're lowering the quota for exports. Why is that? And China said that, we have a big internal market. We are today 4 billion people. We have a thriving middle class, people who want to buy electric cars. And we produce these resources on our own. Why would you like us to sell you these resources while we need these resources for ourselves? That makes a lot of sense, right? We, as China, have been making a lot of efforts, invested, and we are just going to keep these metals for our own development. And also, if you want to get an access to these metals, says China, well, basically, we're not going to sell you the metal. We're going to transform the metal on our own territory. That has a name. That is going down the value chain. Let me give you an image. The Chinese came to us. That is an image. They didn't say so, but let me rephrase that. They came to the French and said, you guys in France, you don't sell grapes, you sell wine. And what makes you so sexy and worldwide known and rich? It's not because you sell Bordeaux grapes, it's because you sell Bordeaux wine. So you sell the added value of the grapes. If you were selling 1 liter of grapes, you would sell it €1. But if you sell 1 liter of Bordeaux wine, you can sell it 1,000 euros. So you get the added value of the grapes, you have your savoir-faire, your know-how, you have your technologies, you have your brands, you have all that is sexy around France, and you sell a Bordeaux bottle of wine with a lot of added value that is going down the value chain of grapes. We, the Chinese, are going to do exactly the same. We're going to go down the value chain of all the rare metals, critical metals, strategic metals that we produce, and we're not going to make the metals anymore. We're not going to make the minerals anymore, we're going to make the metals. So we're going to refine, and we're going to multiply by 10 the whatever we get if we are able to refine this on our own territory. We're going to make more benefits, and we're going to create jobs in China. We're going to create jobs for the people, not to work in the mines anymore, but jobs with added value, with people who have been in university, and who want to have a better life and a better salary, and who want to buy an iPhone. And actually, what we're going to do better than that, we're going to make the magnets. I told you, ladies and gentlemen, you have a magnet in your phone. The magnets helps the phone vibrating. These magnets are everywhere today in the digital world and in the clean world. The magnet is the basis of electric motors. when the magnet of rare earths is being crossed by an electricity, a flux of electricity, the magnet starts turning and moving. And it's a way to replace the oil motor by something which is creating movements, and you can make movements with everything. Movements with your phone, movements with your toothbrush in the morning, and movements with cars, movements with trains, maybe tomorrow movements with planes. So this is a key for the electricity green revolution, the magnet. And China said that we're going to become the world leader for magnet production, and we're going to get even richer. So they got every magnet producer from the rest of the world, Japan, the United States, and they got it in China, and today they produce 90% of the magnets in the world. So what you have in your pocket is Chinese magnets. And they got much richer, and this is logical. And then they said, but what about the cars? You know, we are moving towards the electricity revolution with cars, green cars. What if we are able to produce our own cars with the metals that we have extracted? And we're going to make the cathodes and anodes, and we're going to produce the batteries. And you know better than we do in Vietnam the brand BYD. BYD is very famous in China, it's getting very famous all around the world, because this is a battery manufacturer who started to make cars, but because they could secure the access to the resources, they buy stakes in mines, so that they're able to go down the mine and to produce the batteries and to make electric cars. And they are the world leader in the manufacturing of electric cars today, even before Tesla. So this is a very good example of a very long-term strategy that has lasted 25 years for China to think that we will progressively build an industrial chain from the mine to the laboratory, and to progressively be able to make more money out of it. And if you are selling not only the metals but the electric cars, which is very expensive, basically you understand why China has become such a world power. It's because they have been able to keep the added value of the green technologies and to actually do better than the West. Today, China is a world leader in green technologies production and in green technologies installation and market on its own soil. This country has 30% of the world installed capacity of wind turbines. China produces 80% of solar panels around the world, but also because they produce the resources for the solar panels, the resource being silicium metal. And China accounts for more than half of the world production of electric cars because they control every step of the process. They control the mining, refining, cathode and anodes, battery production, cell production, and eventually the cars. So we're talking about a very, very clever move by China here to make the most of the energy transition and to be the new superpower because they have had such a clever move of manufacturing, mastering every step of the process. And we in the West, we haven't really understood that. You know, I'm so happy to live in my country. I'm a journalist, and I'm so happy to be able to speak about whatever I want. Democracy. But when you are in a democracy, and I would like to still be in a democracy, but you know, look at what's going on in the United States. One president is there, the other is there, and then another president is coming, and then another president is coming, and you know, you see that there is no logic, no lots of rationale sometimes in the way the politicians are deciding. And they take a strategy for 4 or 5 years, and then they change the strategy for 4 or 5 years. And they're just like, how can I be re-elected? Okay, I need to make sure that I won't bother anyone, so I won't take any any painful decisions. I will just make sure that I get re-elected, right? I mean, this is one of the side effects of democracy, is that we don't have in France anymore a long-term strategy in terms of industries. We don't have it. Because you can't have long-term strategy if you just think about the next re-election in the next 5 years. You need to have a 25-year stance at everything. You need to say, will have to pay a price right now for the next generation to enjoy the benefits of the decisions I make today. We have to think in 2025, I make painful decisions for the next generation in 2050 to make the most of it. I'm not going to be re-elected in the next elections because people will not be happy. But I don't care because I know that my grandchildren and my children will be happy. We don't think that way anymore in my country. We don't think that way. There is no long-term strategy. But if you can apply a clever, patient, long-term strategy, you are able to make that happen. In 2000, I think that was 20, there was an event which occurred. Do you know a virus, COVID-19, came suddenly? And I don't know how that was in Vietnam, but in France, we spent 3 weeks without any masks. We were waiting for the Chinese to make the masks for us. So for 3 weeks, my mother was sewing masks, and I was wearing a mask made by my mother, waiting for China to, supply France with masks. We're just like, that's amazing. I mean, when we are talking about something strategic as masks, we're just completely lost. We are completely dependent upon other countries. Another thing happened in 2022 in Europe, that was the Ukraine war. Russia invaded Ukraine, and at the same time Russia said, we are importing gas to Europe, notably gas to Germany, and we're going to cease, to stop the exports of gas. And we the Europeans said, my goodness, we have been so naive, believing that the rules of WTO, of the world markets, would work perfectly well, and that we would get Russian gas as much as we wanted, because Russia was actually, how can I say, making gas a weapon in diplomatic relationships. And these two events, in 2020, 2022, helped us in Europe change our mindset, because we realized that you can't just believe in the rules of the invisible hands of the market like we used to do before. Hyperglobalization has changed in such a way where countries see their raw materials as a weapon in diplomatic relations, and some other countries keep their materials, as I mentioned, to go down the value chain. And we Europeans, if we keep believing that we're going to be completely, depending without any risks upon other countries, we're going to get into trouble. So these two events made us progressively change our mindset, we European leaders, but also in the United States. And there's one person who understood that better than others in the United States back in 2017, and this person is Donald Trump. In 2017 in the United States, that was the first term of President Trump. And he asked a complete review of critical mineral supply chain in the United States, especially for the sector of defense. Because the defense technologies is exactly the same metals. And if you don't get rare earths, and if you have to get the rare earths from China for your fighter jets, that creates a national security issue. So when you're America first, and when you are engaging into a trade war with China, that is not very serious to be depending upon Chinese rare earths for your national security metals. So Donald Trump accelerated a policy, whereas the United States would actually start to develop their own mineral sovereignty, their own mineral strategy. And that happened also in the rest of Europe. And in 2022, I'm talking about my country, the French president, my French president, Macron, ordered a report to pave the way for French critical minerals sovereignty strategy. And in 2024, last year, the European Union passed what we call the Critical Raw Materials Act. And this is basically the Bible today in Europe for how do we produce metals on our own territory, how do we refine these metals on our own territory, how do we make sure that we have access to these resources. That is a mineral security strategy, that is an industrial sovereignty strategies, and these strategies have been popping up everywhere in the world, and it's coming in Vietnam, in order to say, listen, the world is getting tense, geopolitics are getting very tricky, I can't just believe that the WTO will protect the international flows of resources for the next 30 years, and I have to gain somehow some independence, some autonomy, some material security. So how do we do that? So this is the West awakening in a way that has come up. What's happening? So here we come to the solutions. First, countries are reviewing their minerals needs. So every country is knocking at the door of geologists, because every country has a geological bureau. Like in the United States, this is the USGS, the United States Geological Survey. In France, this is the BRGM, le Bureau des Ressources Géologiques et Minières. So every geological survey in every country says, oh, okay, yes, you need metals, for sure. Yeah, for electric cars you need this, for your defense industries you need this, and for your iPhones you need this metal. Okay, and what do I get? Nothing. You get everything from other countries. Okay, so these metals are critical, and you will hear in the news the word critical minerals, which means that if one country, which is the biggest producer of such metals, stops producing, stops exporting, there is no B plan. There is no plan B. There is no alternative, and that metal is critical. So what countries have done for the last years is reviewing their critical minerals list. What is critical for us? What is the risk of supply disruption that puts my economy down to the soil, that stops my economy if I don't have access to these resources? This is what has been done for the last years. And then countries all around the world, especially in the West, have started to say, okay, what if I open mines in my own country? What if I open mines, like, what if I review my subsoil and I produce my own minerals? And in the United States, you have lots of lithium, lots of antimony, lots of cobalt, lots of rare earths. In Australia, you have lithium. In Canada, you have everything. In Europe, you have many metals. In Europe, you have so much lithium, so much graphite, rare earths, tungsten, antimony, germanium, blah, blah, blah. In my country, there is a lot of metals. So you need to come now to say to the French citizen, you want to drive your electric car? Okay, we're going to dig in your garden. We're going to make a hole in your garden, and we're going to get all the minerals for your electric car in the country of France for you to be green. What? I mean, the French people are just like, but you told us that we were going to be clean. Not that we were going to make holes in our territories. So we are having a debate right now in Europe and in France over, are we going to open these freaking mines? Really? For electric cars? And for this clean transition? Are you serious about that? No one wants it. So you see all the paradox, and I would say all the hypocrisy of the French. Saying, yeah, I want my electric cars, yes. Get the metal somewhere else. I want the metals clean, and I want to drive in my zero-emission zones in the center of Paris. And we're saying, it's tricky, right? Because we need to have this mineral sovereignty if you want to produce your own Renault-brand cars. Because if you don't get the metals in France, Renault won't exist anymore in a couple of decades. By the way, there is a dark side to the energy transition. Who's paying the cost? The poor. And the rich enjoy their electric cars. This is not moral. This is not ethical. This is hypocritical. If we want to have like a fair energy transition, we need to ask the very provocative question, how are we going to share the benefits and how are we going to share the costs? And that cost is where is the money. If you just let the Chinese pay the price, for me the French to say I'm clean and responsible towards future generations, there is a problem. So I've been an advocate myself in my country, and I've had many enemies saying we need to open minds in France because we need to be responsible. This debate is coming right now everywhere in the West, and that creates lots of social tensions. The politicians don't want to bring that question to the table. For the next presidential elections coming in France in 2 years, I swear that will never be addressed. This question will not be asked. Because you lose the elections in France in 27 if you speak about that and you say, yes, we're going to open minds. That is the political suicide. Okay? But this question is coming to the table. So if we don't want to open the minds in our territory, what if we go and find these metals somewhere else in the world? What if we knock at the door of Vietnam and say, Vietnam, you have rare earths, right? You have the 6, I took my notes and did some research. You have many things. You have rare earths, you have, the Americans reviewed this year the reserves of rare earths of Vietnam. They brought the figures down. In Vietnam you have 3.5 millions of reserves, of tons of reserves. In the north, Lai Chau, Song La, Lao Cai, and in central Vietnam, Ha Tinh, Binh Trong. I speak a very bad Vietnamese. But you have rare earths. You have the 6 world reserves, between the 6 and the 11th ranking reserves of rare earths. You have bauxite, you have gold, you have graphite, you have antimony, you have copper, you have zinc, you have tin, you have manganese, you have gallium. You produce already, in Vietnam you produce tungsten. You are the 2nd world producer of tungsten. You produce a bit of rare earths, only 300 tons, very few production. You are I think the 6th ranking rare earths producer in the world. But you also already produce antimony, manganese, bauxite. You are the 11th producer. Olaf Scholz, the former German chancellor, came in 2022 in Vietnam and offered to build partnerships with Vietnam over the development of a mining space in Vietnam. Anthony Albanese from Australia came in 2024 and offered also to develop better mining partnerships. Joe Biden came in 2023, spoke about many things, but the question of the mining space in Vietnam was one of the discussions. Okay? So basically Vietnam holds a potential, and like many other countries, Burma and in Southeast Asia, Burma, Philippines, Burma has rare earths, Philippines and Indonesia have lots of nickel. There are rare earths also in Malaysia. Rare earths are being refined in Malaysia already. Basically you can get these resources, but Vietnam could also have an advantage, and Western countries could be interested in your mining resources. And here comes a question for Vietnam. At what cost will you accept to engage into diplomatic and commercial and trade relationships with the West? What are your strengths? You have these resources, you have these reserves, you already have a mining space. What are the hurdles? You need more technology to refine the rare earths. You need more know-how and human resources. There have been corruption scandals over rare earth activities in Vietnam for the last years, so that need to be also trusted by foreign investors. And especially Vietnam will logically want to do like China did. You will not want to sell the grapes, you will want to sell the wine. So you will want to say to the French, the Germans, the Americans, the Australians, okay, you want to have some more rare earths? Yes, we have a plan in Vietnam. We're going to produce much more rare earths by 2030. There is a plan in Vietnam for that. We're going to open 3 to 4 mines, and we're going to produce 2,000, I think it's 2 tons of rare earths. Very few, but we're going to develop our rare earths mining space. But we're going to want not to sell the rare earths. We're going to want to sell the magnets. We're going to want to sell, the added value. So if you want to keep the added value in Vietnam, you will need to develop an industrial strategy. So the question would be, how does that get developed in the long run in order to make the mining space a factor, a leverage of inclusive growth for Vietnam? Not just for the West to take the minerals and to get rich out of the minerals. That would be green colonialism. So you want to go down the value chain, and you will need in Vietnam a long-term industrial, wise, patient, clever strategy, exactly like China did and like Indonesia is doing right now. Indonesia doesn't export any metal which is raw. It only exports metal which is partly or totally refined. And Indonesia succeeds in this way, providing that they can build roads, ports, electricity, power plants, have human resources, bring investor confidence so that they can develop their mining and their downstream strategy. Okay, so we are seeing these diplomatic relations everywhere taking place, where every country around the world goes to see other countries and say, hey, what do you have like metals? Can you produce these metals for me? Oh yes, I can, but we're going to go into negotiations. Here comes Ukraine. We've talked a lot about Ukraine recently, right? You mentioned that was a very hot topic. I mean, that's amazing that 7 years after the book was published, this is such a huge topic, because President Trump, as you know, came to Ukraine recently and said, okay, we want to sign a peace deal, but Ukraine has lots of minerals. You have everything in Ukraine. They have lithium, rare earths, graphite, manganese, titanium, everything. And I would like to have access to the resources. And the first versions of the trade deal that Trump offered to the Ukrainians was very ill-balanced, very abusive for the interests of the Americans. So President Zelensky discussed with Donald Trump for a while, and they came up to an agreement last week, which is kind of a balanced deal. And basically, it's just a framework deal that will need to be rediscussed into more details. But the idea for the balance of power in the negotiations between the United States and Ukraine has been exactly what I said about Vietnam. It is, okay, the United States, you want to come to Ukraine for having access to the resource? Very good, but you know we are a destroyed country. We need to build roads to then get access to the mines, and we need roads to bring the metals out of the mines. Who will build the roads? Who will pay for that? Who will pay for the human resource to be formed, for the transfers of technology? Who will pay for buildings, electricity, power plants, for refining the technologies, the metals? Will there be some refining plants in Ukraine? Of course the Ukrainians want the refining plants in Ukraine. They want to produce the wine, not the grapes. All these questions are on the table. So the question will be, who will pay? Which country will accept, and will Ukraine be able to keep the added value on its own territory like China did? And who will get the benefits? So the benefits will be 50-50, and the investment will be 50-50, something like this. So this looks like in the paper like kind of an okay deal. That looks like it's okay. The good news for Zelensky is that the moment the United States will invest billions of dollars into the Ukrainian territory for developing that, they will have so many assets. They will not want the Russians to invade Ukraine again, because there will be strategic economic assets funded by the United States to get the money back in 10 or 20 years when the mines will be producing. That is a time for the mine to open. Donald Trump doesn't say it, but he won't see any rare earths extracted from Ukraine during his first term, his second term, and probably during his lifetime, because it will take 10 years to open a mine in Ukraine. It takes a lot of time. And by 2035, yes, the metals will be produced, and that will bring money. But in the meantime, the United States will have invested so much that actually they will need to secure their assets. So, for Zelensky, the plan is this. The United States are coming to my territory. They are funding lots of assets. I pay, they pay. They have strategic mining and refining assets, and they will want to protect them from the Russians. So that is a guarantee for peace for my country if the Americans come and if they secure their assets, because if they secure their assets, they secure my country. So this is a plan, this is a strategy of Zelensky, bringing the United States to Ukraine to secure Ukraine. So these metals could be metals for peace, could be metals for war, could be metals for peace. I want to believe that there could be metals for peace on the eastern shores of Europe. No, Trump came to Greenland and he said we want to have access to Greenland for many reasons. There are some critical minerals in Greenland. No one knows if anyone will ever produce metals from Greenland. There is only one mine operating in Greenland right now. So that is a long-term strategy. But I just wanted to mention that Vietnam and other countries rich of their resources will become the center of future diplomatic and trade negotiations in this green world age. We're talking about green diplomacy. It's not about oil, it's not about gas, it's not about coal, it's about all these resources, and as you see, we're shifting dependencies. You get rid of oil, but you find another dependency. We're not solving one problem, we're substituting one problem by one another problem. It's not the problem of getting access to Saudi oil, but to Vietnamese and Chinese and Ukrainian rare earths, with all the new stakes around that. So maybe there is a solution. I have 5 minutes left. What about going to the oceans? There are lots of metals down into the Indian Ocean. There are lots of polymetallic nodules down the Pacific Ocean. If you go 5,000 meters deep in the middle of the Clarion-Clipperton zone, which is 2,000 kilometers west of Mexico in the northern Pacific, you find huge plains, 5,000 meters deep, with lots of polymetallic nodules, small truffles, like the size of my hand, like this, filled with metals. And some companies, notably a Canadian company, whose name is TMC, it's a metals company, offer to get access with specific technologies to such metals to aspire to vacuum them from the soil, from the subsea, from the deep sea soil, and to bring them back to Earth and to refine them. So that is a way also to get access to the minerals. And that creates lots of discussions and lots of debates, because what will be the environmental costs of doing so? No one knows. Some experts are saying no environmental costs. Some others are saying huge environmental costs. And some others say we actually don't know because we don't even know the biodiversity 5,000 meters deep. And there is a lot of biodiversity, a lot of it. So we are taking the risk of actually, causing adverse environmental effects, but we don't know the extent of these environmental effects because we don't know the biodiversity. So lots of them say, first let's explore and let's figure out what kind of biodiversity there is in the deep sea bed. And then once we know, and once we exactly know the environmental cost of accessing these resources, we'll take the decision of extracting or not extracting. But it's too early. So we are right now into these discussions taking place at the IASA, the International Seabed Authority, which is an emanation of the UN. These discussions are taking place in Jamaica, where the IASA is based, and where countries negotiate together around the question of will we extract these resources from the seabed. But that would bring a huge geopolitics of extracting resources from these areas of the world, because some countries will want to get access to this new territories, and you imagine all the huge stakes around that. And for the 5 minutes left I have, I would like to talk to you about circular economy and recycling. We are heading towards a low-carbon world, but we are heading towards a high metals world. So if you want to emit less CO2, you will have to extract more metals. Okay? So whatever you want to gain upstairs, over your head, you will lose it downstairs, down your feet. So what you get there, you lose it there. I mean, there is a transfer of problems. And we're heading towards a world where we're going to extract so much minerals and metals for making the green world possible. In the next 30 years, and there is a figure for all of our needs, the humankind will extract more metals than everything it has extracted for the last 70,000 years. Not only copper, all the metals. It's going to be freaking huge. Can we make a world sustainable in this high metals world and highly material world? I tell you, I don't think so. It's not because it's green that it's clean. It's not because it's green that it's zero emission. It's not because it's green that it's responsible. It's not because it's green that it is sustainable. If you want to make the world really green, you get to go much farther than just turning to electric cars. You need to make a low carbon world and you need to make a low metals world. So how do we come up with a world where we're going to limit the impact of mining on the planet, on the ecosystems? And that comes with many questions. And one of the questions is recycling and circular economy. So basically, what do you do with your phone when your phone is down? What do you do in Vietnam? I don't know how that works. You bring it back to the recycler? Probably. But very few phones are being recycled today. They're just being thrown away. Some of them end up in Ghana and Nigeria in huge electronic waste plants. So the question is, how do we make sure that we manufacture an iPhone in the future and an electric car in the future? We manufacture it in the way so that we think about this recycling. So we make it more easily recyclable to facilitate the recycling at the end of the life of such technology. This is what we call eco-design. What about making sure once the technology is, when your phone is off, that you bring it back to the right bin, so that the collection of the waste is being facilitated. And so that once it's collected, it's going to the recycling plant. But before that, you can repair all these technologies. The technologies today are meant to be not repaired, basically. Right? I mean, your phone is not made to be repaired. Many phones, you can't change the batteries. Because if you change the battery, you can make it last longer. So the point is to actually, for some phones, to glue the battery to the phone, and once the battery is off, you just have to change the phone. So how do you make it so that you can repair, and you can create a repair economy out of that? These are big questions relating to the responsible use of such resources. And at the end of the process, how do you recycle that? And recycling is not very easy, because recycling metals into your phone is costly. If you want to recycle the metals which are mixed, it costs more than going back to the mine. And many companies, for business reasons, go back to the mine rather than to the recycler because they don't want to pay too much money. They want to make a good margin. So what will be your responsibilities as consumers to require, and your responsibilities as business men and researchers, or business women and researchers in the future to change that, and to make sure that in the future we actually rely more and more not on primary resources coming from the ground, but on secondary resources coming from the recycling plant, so that the resources keep being in the loops of the economy, keeps being reused and recycled, so that we don't have to go back to the mine. And recycling here is key in order to come up with a better and more sustainable world. And I will finish for the 1 minute I have by asking more questions. What about our consumption lifestyles? What about my next phone which I want to change in 18 months? What about my next car that I would like to have because it's brand new and it's wonderfully beautiful? These questions are very much being asked in our societies today in terms of responsible use of the technologies that we have, and how we make sure that we use them in a responsible way. It's not about technology, it's about my personal responsibility as a consumer to actually act in a way that makes the world sustainable, and that bring lots of questions. But Albert Einstein, he had a wonderful word, a wonderful phrase. He said once this nice sentence, he said, "We don't solve a problem with the same mindset that has created the problem." The thing is, we're trying to solve one problem, our dependence upon oil and gas and coal, with the same mindset that has created the problem. And we end up in a way that we are all replacing the problems with hydrocarbons, with problems with mining. We're just shifting the problem. We're not solving them, we are just shifting them and replacing some issues with other issues, because we have the same mindset. So how do we change the mindset, our mindsets, which are citizenship mindset, consuming mindset, in order to really find the path to a sustainable world? Thank you for your attention, and we can keep discussing around questions.
And that's a very wonderful speech from our speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Pitron, for your thought-provoking and very insightful presentation. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we will have now a short break. Please take this opportunity to refresh yourself and prepare for the Q&A sessions. And please kindly return to your seat promptly by 10 a.m. Thank you. And from now, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. When being selected, kindly introduce yourself by your name and your faculty before asking your question. Remember that your question should be clear and state precisely. Thank you. Now, please raise your hand if you have any questions.
Hello. So first of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Khoa from International Relations, and I'm great alumni. So first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Pitron and also News for organizing this academic seminar. And there is a question that I would like to ask more about behind the scene question, but I think particularly attached to academy, that's from the perspective of investigative journalism. So how do you able to approach very new topic of rare metals and connect it to geoeconomics and geopolitics? And I have known that you have conducted research about more than 6 years, around 6 years with the book and various editions. And maybe I ask, what's your strategy to able to come up with the topic, able to create a roadmap for research, and then to continue and develop your research to this day, and to how to connect and clarify all the data from China, India, and all other sectors to create a more meaningful picture for the audience. Thank you very much.
This is a very interesting question, and I will need 2 hours to answer it. So you lock the door and we're here until the end of the day. So I'll try to answer very shortly, but this is a very interesting question. I drove my investigation out of intuition. I mean, we were back in... my first rare earth story, that was a documentary for French TV5, that was in 2010-11. And I was so fascinated by the subject, and I said to myself, I'm not going to dig that subject. I will keep it, and I will keep working on it until the moment it was published in 2018. And for these years, I had this inner feeling and intuition that that would be big. That would be a big subject. And I probably took a lot of risks, professionally speaking, because I didn't get any money for years doing so. So I was having a full-time job as a journalist. I was doing many subjects all around the world. And everywhere I was going on Earth, I was, spending a bit of time to make a report on critical minerals. I was going, for example, to Indonesia for a Geo magazine talking about smiling Islam in Indonesia. And I was, okay, I'm there and they pay for my trip, but what if I take 1 more week on my own money to go to Bangka Island, which is north of Jakarta, where this is one of the world's most important places for tin extraction. So I would spend 1 week there, and 1 week there, and 1 week there around the world, and bring information for years and years, and at some point I said I'm going to write a book. And that was, I mean, retrospectively crazy from a pure economic viewpoint, because I had no money. I just took the risk of saying I'm going to make something which seems to be important for me, and going to write it for myself. And no one will read it, but at least I will be confident and proud for myself. And when I will have children and grandchildren, they will say, hey, Daddy, what are we doing in your journalism life? And I will say, read my book, you will know what I was writing about. But that's it. So there was no rationale behind the passion for writing, for being a journalist, and behind the intuition that I was touching upon something that would probably become huge, and that became huge. How do I live now? How do I, so, and as a journalist, my work is wonderful in that way that I have to have a cross-analytical view on things. So it's a bit of a history, it's a bit of politics, it's a bit of environment, it's a bit of social sciences, it's a bit of philosophy, it's geopolitics. So you bring, it's a bit of economics, so you bring all these different subject studies, disciplinaries together, and you mix them together into a transdisciplinary approach of everything. So I wouldn't have only an economic approach to something, because that doesn't make sense. As I try to explain to you, it's because you look at the environmental side that you understand the economic side. And it's because you look at the economic side that you understand the geopolitical side. Everything is intertwined. Everything comes together into a global narrative of how the world is going. And if I could give you students an advice, first follow your passions. Follow what you feel like where you're feeling great yourself. Because if you're feeling great, you will be good at what you do. Because you won't count the extra hour working, and you will do it better. So first, choose something which you feel like you have the fire for, really. And second, I think, always have a look at, how the other department is working on that. In France, we think economics, geopolitics, environment. Everything is mixed. It's a complex approach to the world, which is more close in value to the reality. More like the Americans do in a way, and I was studying in the United States. When you look at law studies in the United States, you don't only look at law, you look at geopolitics and economics, and you bring these disciplinaries together to understand what law is all about. Same here. So my advice would be to have a large view approach to any subject, because you have a better understanding of the world when you break silos and when you look transdisciplinary. Since the book was published, I could have a better economic model, because I got authors rights out of the book, and I'm a researcher, so I work in a think tank, and I can also, have fundings out of my researchers. That helps me fund my future books. So my business model is about finding sufficient resources out of my former books and out of my specialization and expertise, which is requested by states, by companies, by NGOs, and in order to fund my next book. So I wrote a second book, Ever Since, which was published a couple of years in France. Maybe Omega Plus will want to publish my second book. He didn't listen. I have to repeat that. No, doesn't listen. No. And now I'm writing a third book. And actually, I'm in Vietnam for my third book. So that takes place in the south of Vietnam. And I'm leaving tomorrow for a report, and my next book is on oceans on the seas, and will be published next year. So hopefully Omega Plus will publish my second book and my third. He still doesn't listen. Anyway, so my business is about taking the risk of funding by my own my next book, but based on the fundings I have from my personal books. To be very honest, no one does that. I mean, in France, in my country, maybe we are very, very few journalists to be able to have such a freedom to say, okay, I'm writing for 3 years my next book, which takes me all around the world, and I'm going to take the risk of publishing it. But that's the way I do it because I love my job, and I don't do that job for money. If I were doing my job for money, I think, you know, I would just not do that job because I wouldn't be able to make a living. So I accept also the risks of my job, which could be physical risks. I took physical risks in my career. I was put in jail once in Zimbabwe. I had some issues in China. I won't go too much into this, but I had issues. And I had wars, I saw wars, and I was into war situations in Africa. I took reputational risks because I bring to the stage issues which are provocative. And saying green world is not green, I made a lot of enemies, especially on social networks about that. And it's also economical risks because I don't get the salary at the end of the month, right? I expect to have a business return by the next 3 years. So that is risks. But I can't do without it. I can't do otherwise because this is my inner fire and that's not my passion. So that's not a satisfying answer to the huge question you had. Once again, I could have taken 3 hours to answer that, but a few words about it.
Thank you for your answer. Next question, please. Staff, please give the microphone to the girl. Yes, thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Guillaume. I'm a sophomore and I'm also a member of Academics Club, Academics Club of International Relations. And I have a question for you is, last month, a long blackout occurred in the Iberian Peninsula due to overloss of the wind and solar electric system. So should every country continue to pursue a full transformation to renewable energy without consideration for nuclear energy? And what change should take place to prevent similar incidents in the future? Thank you.
Very interesting question. The future of the world energy mix and the world electricity mix is not 100% something. It will never be. It will be a mix of many sources of energy. Whether we want it or not, whether we like it or not, in the future there will be oil, and there will be gas, and there will be coal. Lots of countries today in the world are opening dozens of coal power plants to supply electricity because it's cheap electricity. That's the reality. So the future will be a combination of hydrocarbon, fossil fuel, electricity and energy. The future will be also made of green electricity, of course, and this is getting developed in the electricity mix. And you see more and more countries, and you see the mix going in the favor of more green electricity, including hydroelectricity, because we didn't talk about hydroelectricity, but building a barrage and producing electricity out of a barrage is hydroelectricity, and that is becoming important. And also it's about nuclear electricity. So you're asking a question to a French citizen in a country which is one of the most nuclearized countries in the world. 75% of our electricity comes from nuclear power plants. This has been the policy by General de Gaulle in the 60s to develop, the 50s, 60s, to develop, I think we have today 48 reactors in France to produce this electricity. It comes with huge challenges, huge ones. The risk of an accident, the treatment of nuclear waste for hundreds of thousands of years, it comes with an immediate benefit, which is that it's almost zero emission electricity. In my view, this is my view, this electricity is great for the energy transition because France has already done its electricity transition towards zero carbon because we have this nuclear power plants strategy, and that brings zero emissions. So in my view, this is part of the mix, and when you look at the development of nuclear electricity around the world, including in China, for example, obviously you can see that this will become part of it. So I think today nuclear electricity is about 10% of the world electricity production. I don't know the figures in the future, but this figure may be going up, and that will be part of the mix. It comes with all the risks that I've mentioned, and everyone is free to have to agree or to disagree with that policy. I personally think that it is good to achieve the energy transition for the next 30 years. This is part of the solution. So the world and the future electricity mix in the world will be diverse. Keep that in mind. Green will be important, but all the other sources will also be, part of a larger diversified mix, including nuclear.
Next, one of our guests has a question we want to ask our speaker. So please, no. Please give the microphone to our guest first, and then next question will be asked by you. Yes.
Hello everyone. I would like to introduce myself first.
No, it's good, but keep the microphone on your ear.
Thank you. I'm just a junior lecturer at University of Law. So I came here today and feel really interested about your books because it will help my work a lot.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Keep the micro on your ear.
Yeah.
Thank you. I listen to you.
So I have actually two questions for you. While teaching at University of Law, University, I researched that three Northeast Asia nations, including China, Japan, and Korea, have a joint statement with Asian countries. With the plan is to build an ecosystem about electric vehicle. So the plan is the Asian country want to build an ecosystem with the help of China, Japan, and Korea. So according to your opinion, so what will take any impact on Asian country economy? And like what you said before, no free lunch, right? No free lunch. So there is a famous Belt and Road Initiative. So I wonder if China will have Asian country want that initiative, so they could trade off rare mineral with the country, and the China will have Asian country like now in Indonesia. They know how to build an ecosystem related to electric cars in those countries. Sorry. I want to ask your opinion about what China can have Asian country like Vietnam and Indonesia to extract minerals and build the ecosystem related to electric cars.
So China is looking everywhere they can for minerals access. They need so much of them, and they have very strong mining companies. I'm thinking about, for example, I forgot the names. I know their name by heart, and I forgot them right now. But I'm thinking about two Chinese mining companies investing massively into mining areas. I'm thinking about Shanghai Resource. Shanghai Resource has actually a 90% stake in Vietnam rare earths. The name of the company is, what is the name of the company? Viet Rare Earths company, extracting rare earths already in China and in Vietnam. And wherever the Chinese go, they are either able to extract or to buy the resource, or having a stake in a company locally, and or importing and bringing it back for refining in their territory. So they are everywhere. I'm not sure I got your question completely right, but let me answer it my way. That is an opportunity and a challenge. The challenge may be to make sure that for the countries welcoming Chinese interests, the extraction and refining are done in an environmental friendly way. These challenges have been stressed, notably in Indonesia. Many companies in China, Chinese companies, extract nickel in Indonesia, and it comes with lots of environmental debates around how they act over there. The good news is they have a real policy, long-term, massive policy of investing into these countries, and that can come up with huge benefits from the economic standpoint, because they look like anyone else in the world for these resources, much more than any other country like the Americans or the French or the Europeans. So they can be a long-term, potentially reliable partner for this resource extraction. But you will see China playing a more important role in the future, wherever in the world, in the mining side. Either it's in Brazil, and in South America, in Africa, and in Asia. And they will obviously want to secure their interests and to have a more important role in countries' affairs, because they have to secure their interests, the diversification of their sources of minerals extraction. Because, once again, they have such a clever policy of going down the value chain, they could be ready to lose money on the extraction side. They can lose money because they don't care, because they know that they gain much more money on the downstream side, chain side. We will see them, we have to expect to deal with them in any way, everywhere. And the question will be also to have your interests being respected into the negotiations with them. But they have a know-how, they have money, and they have a political state policy to support this mineral policy, this mineral diplomacy.
Yes, thank you. And may I start with the microphone to the friend? Yes, thank you.
Okay, good morning everyone. So first, I want to introduce myself first. I'm a sophomore from International Relations faculty, and I also thank to our faculty to help to celebrate this seminar. And before I have my questions. I have taken note something that Mr. Pitron showed, that China had established the dominance over the rare metal supply chains through a long-term industrial strategy, and often circumventing liberal trade norms. And meanwhile, institutions as the WTO, OECD, and IMF appear too slow to adapt to a world where the strategic resources are increasingly weaponized. So here's my question: does China's rare metal strategy reveal the inability of Western institutions to regulate the geo-economic relations of the 21st century?
Can you repeat the last sentence?
Yeah. Does China's rare metal strategy reveal the inability of Western institutions to regulate the geo-economic realities of 21st century?
Okay, I need 3 hours. Resources are weaponized, and they are getting weaponized. I'm not saying about all the resources, and the flows of international trade will keep going. But as you see what's going on between China and the United States with all these trade sanctions, resources are weaponized. As a reaction, by the way, of the US sanctions, not sanctions, but trade quotas, trade tariffs, which has been decided by President Trump, China decided a couple of weeks ago to strengthen the difficulties, the hurdles for exportation of 7 rare earths to the United States, including heavy rare earths such as yttrium and dysprosium. Dysprosium being very important for the magnets, for the production of magnets, which I've mentioned. So you see these resources being weaponized in a way. I'm not very optimistic in the ability of trade, of international institutions today to play a role here, to be very honest. A couple of years ago, China was sued by Mexico, the United States, the European Union, in front of the tribunal of the WTO, l'organisme de règlement des différends in French, I forgot how to say that in English, because they were not respecting WTO regulations for rare earth exports. And China was actually sentenced twice, penalized by the WTO. But what they did is that they stopped the quota exports and they replaced them by quota production. So, if I say in a nutshell, they just circumvented the sanction that came up with the same results. They just replaced the export limitations by production limitations, so they would be respecting the law, but coming up to the same results. Today, in response to many tariffs that have been put in place, lots of countries are attacking the United States. But so what? Indonesia has been putting export limitations of many minerals. And many countries said, okay, we're going to sue you to the WTO because you don't respect the WTO free flows regulations. And Indonesia answered, we don't care. Because it's more important for us to be fined or whatever, to be condemned by the WTO. It's more important to go down the value chain and to get richer than to have a sanction by the WTO. So where is the space for negotiations in this rare minerals space here? I think we're heading towards a world where the rules will be challenged in a huge way, and where we have to understand that if we are not able to develop a certain amount of sovereignty, I'm not saying 100% sovereignty on minerals. I mean, Vietnam will not be 100% sovereign on minerals. It's just not possible, because in your everyday life, how many metals do you use in your everyday life? Like from 7 a.m. to midnight. At the end of the day, how many metals will you have used? That is the question.
More than 40.
Yeah, and it's not 40, it's 70. Okay? So, you don't find these 70 metals in Vietnam. I mean, you have a few of them, you have maybe 10, 20 of them, but you don't have the 70. And let's assume that you have 20 of them already, you won't open 20 mines of 20 different metals. You won't. So there will always be a need for someone else's metals that you will get, either in the form of a metal, or in the form of a semi-finished product, or a finished product. But you have to expect that there will be tensions, negotiations in the future where what do you get and what do you give in return. And in this game of international relations, where resources are weaponized, you will have to keep your interest here by having sufficient resource production and a stronger economy in order to exchange what you have, so that the country in front of you respects you in a way. So that will mean that you will have to be in a way somewhere partially independent. That is, in my view, what you have to rely on in the future. But if you just keep relying on UN and IMF and WTO, like the Europeans do in a very naive way, believing that the rules of international diplomacy in the post-World War II era will keep applying for the next 50 years, we're dead. And the Europeans start understanding that they have to strengthen their narrative, strengthen their spirit, strengthen their diplomacy, strengthen their mineral policy if they want to be strong in that respect. The future will be a world of negotiations. Money, goods, ideas, materials will keep flowing. You will keep buying many resources from all around the world as long as you have sufficient arguments to bring in exchange for that. These countries have weaknesses. China has weaknesses. They import oil. They have no potash, not sufficient potash as an ingredient for their agriculture. So at some point, this is a balance of powers between what you have, what you need, and what you can give in return. But we have to think in a different way where resource nationalism will be more important into your landscape, into your mental landscape. I hope that answers a bit your question.
And we would love to receive one more question due to the time limitation. Wow, so many person want to ask. Mr. Pitron, can you choose one person that you want them to ask you?
So difficult. Because your questions were very interesting, so I had to answer, you. I'll be staying a bit after, so we can discuss after that.
So hi, I'm a junior in International Relations Faculty, and thank you so much for your insightful sharing, and I was really enjoying along the way. And after your speech, I have a small question. So, as Vietnam is becoming a new player in this green energy transition, how should we incorporate the estimated environmental cost of mining rare materials in government decision making? For example, like redistribution policy, to mitigate the negative social consequences.
Such an interesting question. I will need 3 hours. Very interesting question. The question is, Vietnam has two ways. First, race to the bottom, producing more with less at a lesser cost, with environmental damages, doing social dumping, environmental dumping. So basically, not taking into account in the price of the future rare earths all the environmental damages that could be created by the rare earths mining and refining, saying, okay, that comes at a cost, but we don't repair the nature after the mining, and we don't include into the price of the rare earths the price of the reparation of the nature. So we can sell the rare earths to everyone at such a cheap cost that actually we are going to need, but they will come with lots of social upheavals in Vietnam. And that is the same thing for everyone on Earth, right? If we do such social dumping. The other way is to say we're going to put more standards and we're going to apply more regulations. We're going to pay people in a fair way. We're going to bring social justice, economic justice. Miners will need to be paid at the minimum wage, and we're going to take care of their health if they have problems, and we're going to treat the waters after the refinement processing part, the refinement stage, and we're going to sell our rare earths at a more expensive price. But there is a risk here, because the Chinese will always be able to bring to the rest of the world the rare earths at a cheaper price. Moreover, I believe still that the second part is better. Let me explain you why. The second solution. I talk from my European perspective. The European countries will not produce rare earths for a while. They don't want it. They don't want to produce rare earths because they won't want the dirt. So they will keep going elsewhere to get the dirt, to get the rare earths. The thing is, the companies which use rare earths, what companies are we talking about in Europe? Electronics, cars, defense industries. They have NGOs, they have media, they have a public opinion saying, where does the metals come from? Your technology is green. Okay, show me how green it is. I'm going to investigate your supply chain if you don't do it, and I'm going to send an NGO investigating how these rare earths have been extracted, wherever you get them. And the company now has regulation in Europe, and the European Union comes with very strong responsible sourcing regulations. Ethical sourcing say you need to know where your rare earths come from, and you need to prove to the state that these metals have been extracted in an ethical way. ESG, environmental, social governance. If you don't, you get fined. Media will come to you. You will lose your reputation. This will be very bad for your stock exchange tomorrow. Okay. So now I see it because I work for this company. This company saying, okay, we're going to have to investigate that. Okay. And if that country is not responsible, we will just cut off the supplies. I would prefer to turn to someone else and to pay a bit more price, as long as this country guarantees that it will produce the rare earths over the long term. It will not cut off supplies one day because this country doesn't agree with me. And second, that I can have the guarantee that I won't have any media bad coverage if they look at, you know, the rare earths extraction process in this country. And this is where I see a competitive advantage for such countries as Vietnam, saying, okay, our rare earths cost more. Today this is a problem. No one wants more expensive rare earths. But we can guarantee that we are a fair partner and a reliable partner, and that we will respect the WTO rules, and we will respect that you can have access to my rare earths for sure. And second, and this is why Olaf Scholz came to, and Americans and Australians come to Vietnam, because they see Vietnam as a potential, reliable partner over the long term. And the second thing is, we're going to export our standards to you. So this is my consumer standard as a French, which will apply to your companies. This is what we call extraterritoriality. This is, by the way, a scandal, because I sell to you, if you want to deal with me, you will have to respect my rules, my ESG regulations. But if you do, you'll get an open access to my market. You can sell anything you want, and companies will want to get access to your rare earths because they will know that these are safe rare earths. So, in that respect, over the medium-long term, I see space for potential competitiveness for Vietnam, but not competitiveness only in the business sense of the word, but taking into consideration competitivity in a larger understanding. Diplomatic competitivity, social competitivity, environmental competitivity, and yes, economic competitivity, but not only just looking at the price and that's it, looking at a larger set of leverage, of criteria, in order to say, okay, I will deal with Vietnam. This is where I see some space in this world where people are getting more conscious about, you know, environmental aspects, hopefully.
Thank you so much, Mr. for all your very deep answers. And outro, there's the finished question, as you can see before, that our participants would love to ask our speaker today, but due to the time constraint, we must now conclude the Q&A sessions. Thank you for Mr. Pitron and all of you guys' active participations. And with his insightful answers, I trust that you gain valuable knowledge and new perspectives on today's topic. And I think that many students, they want to ask you more questions, but we don't have time to answer. So can you tell them your email so that they could send you many questions, that because it's a very crucial topic for us to discuss today, but we need no time.
So I have a website. My website is my first name and my last name.com, GuillaumePitron.com, and on the website you find information about what I do, and you find on the contact page my email. A few words to say. I've been so honored to speak here. Such an honor for me to say that, think that this is the 12th language of translation of my first book, The Rare Metals War, here in Vietnam. And you can't imagine how proud I feel to be invited here to speak, to exchange with you, to bring these fascinating and provocative ideas worldwide. Thank you for your interest. I'm happy to sign the book after that and to discuss a bit if you want. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of today's International Academic Seminar, we would like to express our gratitude to all of you for joining us. Again, a very special thank you to our speaker for sharing such insightful perspectives for us about the geopolitics and geoeconomics of rare metals. And also our heartfelt appreciation goes to Mr. Guillaume Pitron for joining us, his presence and support at today's event. And also we would like to express our thanks to all our distinguished guests, lecturers and students for taking the time to join us today. And again, please give ourselves a big round of applause.